Okay, hi everyone. We are just waiting on the captioner and the interpreter, and once we have those, we will get started. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started just for time's sake. Also, we are having some technical difficulties with everyone that's signing in is having Diane's name. So feel free to change your name using the more button. But without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce Sally Baker, our speaker today.
Sorry, guys, hold on one second. I just wanted to
Okay.
apologize to everybody. Of course, we were just saying that we practiced this 100 times, and of course the day everything had to be messed up as far as technology goes. So I apologize. Right now, we don't have a captioner and a sign language interpreter. I think there's got to be something with Zoom that they're not able to get in. So I'm hoping that they'll be able to pop in and start once they do. But for time's sake, we want to get started for everybody. And Alton is okay. Yes. All right. Hold on. Let's move you over, Alton. All right, so we have our interpreter here too as well, that just logged in. So again, sorry guys, but we wanted to make sure that everything was set for everybody to go, but I will have this recording later. And you can, if it allows you to, you can rename yourself. You don't all have to be under my name for this. I have no clue in the world how that possibly happened, but we all know how it goes when it's Zoom and technology and everything. So thank you for everybody's patience, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, so I will go ahead and introduce our speaker today, Sally Baker. Sally has worked at Family Connections of South Carolina for 3 years and currently serves as a director of family engagement. Sally has over 15 years of experience working with children with disabilities and special healthcare needs. Sally dedicated 16 years as a camp counselor at a camp for children and their siblings that have been diagnosed with childhood cancers or leukemia. This experience directly shaped her desire to work with children with special needs and healthcare needs and their families. Sally has earned a Bachelor of Science in Special Education and a Master's of Education in Language and Literacy from the University of South Carolina. And she spent 11 years working as a certified child life specialist in children's hospitals, both in Columbia, South Carolina, and Los Angeles, California, supporting children of all ages and their families during their hospitalizations. Her work at Family Connection allows Sally to blend her knowledge of the special education and healthcare systems while supporting families and families of children with disabilities and special healthcare needs.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. And I can't see everybody's names on the participant list, but I mean, who doesn't want to be Diane Owens? I mean, I think that would be so fun to have that as my name up here right now.
I really appreciate that, but
so I am here today to talk to you guys a little bit about kind of how to use some behavior plans and supports, and including families together in kind of next steps and thinking about mental health and what that might look like in the workforce as you guys are moving into the next phase of life, which is super exciting. I am pretty informal when it comes to presenting, so if you guys have questions, please feel free to pop them. I believe we have a chat that you can pop questions or comments into, and Caroline or Diane can interrupt me and ask those questions. I'm happy to answer along the way or at the end. So I will go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about where I'm from. For those of you who don't know Family Connection, we are a nonprofit agency here in the state, and we cover the entire state of South Carolina. And we work with families of children birth to 26 years old who have either a special healthcare need or a special need of some kind. So we are not diagnosis specific, and we will work with families at all points and all walks of life. On the screen, you see 3 of our major grants that we use and that we have been awarded to allow us to do our work at no cost to families. The biggest one that I work under is the one you see on the bottom of your screen from the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, that has awarded us a grant and designated us as the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of South Carolina. And so because of that, we get to come do things like this, and we get to do it at no cost and support families throughout the educational system through their children's educational careers. So my objectives for today are kind of what I mentioned a second ago, to discuss and understand how behavior plans can support individuals, and then discuss the benefits of family engagement and employment. And then how do those 2 things together, how do they support mental health? Because that is something that we all want to be cognizant of all the time, but I think has definitely come to light, especially in this pandemic world that we live in currently, that I hope we're out of soon. But a way for us to just really think about how to support each other. And I think this really goes for everybody. But I want to just dig in a little bit, and you guys, like I said, ask questions if you have them. So first thing, what is a behavior plan? So a behavior plan, you may also hear them called a behavior support plan. A behavior plan is really a plan that assists an individual in building positive behaviors to replace or reduce challenging or dangerous behaviors. So, it could include things like teaching, improved communication, increasing relationships, using clinical interventions. You guys are, I think most of you are on your way out of high school if you're not already out. And some of you may have had a behavior intervention plan in place while you were there. Something like that could be transferred over into the workforce and could be looked at. Those of you who are maybe on with me as professionals and are supporting individuals, something to think about, a way to support their needs. And, and the goal is really to be that support system so that everyone has the opportunity to advance and to be productive. So a behavior plan really is kind of looking at what happens just before an incident or behavior occurs, and then what happens right after that. So we'll dig into it a little bit. I'll try not to jump ahead, but just really thinking about what it is that's causing those behaviors that we're seeing that are maybe difficult behaviors to see in whatever setting you're in. A behavior plan should really be simple so that it can be effective. If it's super cumbersome and it's 3 or 4 pages long, nobody has time to really read that or remember it all. We all have a lot on our plates and a lot in our minds lately. And so sometimes it's hard to remember all the pieces. So if it can be a simple plan that's put in place, a simple document that someone can reference quickly, then you have more of a chance of this being effective and actually being supportive. And of course, if it's not working, let's look at it again. Let's go back to the drawing board. and, figure out another way to support somebody. So kind of the question that I think comes up is, well, when do I ask for a behavior plan? Or when should I, as a provider, as a supervisor or manager, maybe ask about one, recommend one, start the process of creating one? So I think this, just like in school, right? We have behavior plans for students in school when there's been a lot of behavior incidents. Maybe there's a lot of write-ups or behavior referrals or whatever terminology you want to use. But if there's been consistent patterns of something happening, then maybe a behavior plan is something we want to look at. So maybe someone continues to walk away from their job station, their workstation, and is kind of meandering or wandering around, and you're not really sure why. Or maybe they're consistently late coming back from break. Things like that. Maybe we need to look at, does that individual need a behavior plan to help support them so that those things don't happen anymore? And so there's a lot of different, if you Google, if you research, if you look, there's a lot of different types of behavior plans that are out there. I'm going to show you a really simplistic one in just a minute. But it could even be that maybe you had one in school. As a student, you had a behavior plan in school that had some really simple behavior accommodations in place that you could take to an employer and say, this really helped me to be productive and be successful in school. Or is this something that we could look at implementing here? And so there's a lot of research coming out around behavior plans if you look for it. HR departments are really looking at it and looking at ways to support staff for some of the reasons that we'll talk about in just a minute, and how it actually does make a difference, makes a positive impact in a work environment. So kind of talked about this a little bit, but what is the purpose of a behavior plan? The purpose is to support. It is to support an individual. You'll hear some of the suggestions and possibilities that I'll mention in a minute, or maybe some things that we all do every day for ourselves and don't really think about it, but maybe someone else needs it to be a little bit more formal, or maybe to ensure that there's consistency across departments and across supervisors or managers or whoever it is. Maybe you need something that just documents this is something that they can do and that helps them to be a productive employee. A behavior plan is not created to be punitive. It is not supposed to be there to discipline something. It is supposed to be there for an individual to support them so that they can be fully productive. So in thinking about creating one, you want to make sure that the individual is a part of that process of creating it and having that conversation, what works, what doesn't work. And then the goal really ultimately should be to continue to promote inclusion as much as possible with other employees and staff within the same job responsibility. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be an equal player, at the table, so to speak. So that's kind of the purpose behind them. And like I said, these are really, really simplistic version. Nothing has to look, I know sometimes we see things that have little clip art and graphics and we're like, that looks like it's for a little kid. Doesn't have to look like this. I just kind of liked this one in particular, because if you look, the 3 rows are broken down into what's working and not working for the individual, for the family, and then for the staff. So everybody has a place to have their voice heard and to see what matters and how it helps. And then from this, you're looking at what's working and what's not working. And then at the bottom, you see, what needs to happen next to build on what's working and to change what's not working. So we really, want to focus on what has worked in the past. We all have those things that we're like, man, I did that and that was amazing. And I was able to get so much more work done because I had this support, because this worked for me. And then there are other times that you're like, I got nothing done because I was in a terrible environment for me, because I get overstimulated and they had me in a cubicle in the middle of the giant workroom. Something as simple as that may be something that we need to look at and think about. And, like I said, I really like this one because what I'm going to kind of move into talking about next is family engagement. And this document has an opportunity to include the family voice in what works and doesn't work. I do work for a parent center. So I spend the majority of my time talking to the parents and the families. And so many times the parents have an amazing idea of what works because they've seen it. They've tried all the different options over the years, especially for you guys who are 18, 19, 20, 21. Your parents have had a lot of years of trying to find what helps you and what doesn't. And so I think their voice can be just as important in this process to, find out what works and what can help you be successful in this next phase of life. Some simple things to think about are, routines. I thrive off of a routine. I really like it. When I don't have a routine, sometimes it makes the day difficult to get through. So thinking about, is there a way to help establish routines in a work environment? Maybe you're someone who has a difficult time getting up in the morning and getting going because maybe you take a medication that makes you very sleepy. And so it takes a little longer for you to get up. So is it possible that maybe you have a later start time in the day and you don't come in at 8:30, maybe you come in at 9:15? Just a little bit of an extra kind of wiggle room in your day. Maybe you need more infrequent breaks. Maybe your attention span is shorter due to any number of reasons. And so maybe you need a frequent break, or maybe you just need to be able to move. Maybe there's a physical limitation that could be supported with a frequent break, just being able to walk around for a few minutes, especially if you work at a job that requires you to sit at a desk. I know that for me, myself, that is something I have started doing for my mental health and for my productivity is I get up and take walks around the parking lot of my office space. I luckily have some coworkers who also have adopted this plan. And so we get out and we're going to do it as long as we can. You guys know we live in South Carolina and pretty soon it's going to feel like it's 500 degrees outside. So we may not take as many walks. But just getting up and moving around, taking a few minutes to step away from the computer, give my eyes a break and come back to what I was doing. But really the development of this plan can help to influence some of those accommodations. So for me personally, thinking about a behavior plan, and if you're thinking, let me back up. If you think about an IEP in school, you have your IEP and you have a behavior plan. Sometimes there's behavior accommodations and the two kind of overlap. So to me, that's kind of what this it kind of does too, is it overlaps a little bit. And coming up with this behavior plan or thinking through this process, you and your employer, or if you're the employer, you and your employee come up with, oh, well, that's a simple accommodation we can put in place that maybe we don't need to put in a formal plan, but we can, and that's an option certainly. So just thinking what's there? What could we possibly use that could help? So some considerations, I've kind of alluded to a few of these, but some considerations to think about when you're creating a behavior plan is employee schedule. Maybe it needs to be adjusted for earlier end times or later start times or vice versa, whatever it is that needs to happen. Maybe their schedule needs to change every day so they don't get stuck in a routine. I don't know. It just kind of depends on the individual. The next one, staff trained. I think this is super important and really speaks to the employers and the providers that are on and listening. Just like in school, when there is a behavior plan or in the IEP, staff training is crucial. And I don't necessarily mean training on what the diagnosis is or anything like that, but what are we looking for? What are the supports and how are they implemented? Because I'm a supervisor, but let's say I'm out one day. I'm out sick, I have a migraine and can't come in or whatever it is. And one of my coworkers is now stepping in as supervisor while I'm out. That supervisor needs to know also what it is that I need to do to support this employee, to be able to be their best. Do they prefer, for my staff, I need to know, do they prefer if I text them versus call them? Simple little things that we can think about. Things like that. So I think training is super important when considering this piece, is just making sure that everyone is on the same page. But then you want to consider, being able to describe what the challenging behavior is. It could be that you're in a work environment that has dangerous components. And so making sure that everyone is safe and that your employee knows the rights the right way to approach those types of situations in those environments. Maybe we need to think about, is there a situation where the behaviors tend to repeatedly occur? Is it in that area where maybe they don't go often, and so they don't know how to navigate that space, and that's a danger to them? Or is it that they are overwhelmed? Like I mentioned a minute ago, they get overstimulated in certain areas. And so maybe we need to have that employee be able to do their job in a different area, but still do the same job. And so keeping them, keeping those things in mind as we make the plan. And then, just kind of what to look out for. I think we all could talk about some of our colleagues and ourselves and think, I kind of know what it looks like before my colleague has a moment where she either kind of explodes a little bit, or she just goes and, retreats into herself, closes her door. We can all kind of see those signs on each other the more that we work with each other. And so that may just be something to consider. And that's where, again, where family input could be really helpful, especially at a new job or a new position. Just kind of knowing what to look out for with each other. And then keeping in mind too, we said our behavior plan is to be supportive, right? It's not to be punitive. The goal of the behavior plan, always in any situation, should be to eventually not need it. We want individuals to learn those coping mechanisms and the coping skills and have the tools in their toolbox to not need that plan anymore. I, like Caroline mentioned, have my background is in special education. And many, many moons ago, when I was in school, learning to be a special ed teacher, one of my professors said, the goal of a special education teacher is to work yourself out of a job, to eventually not be needed because you've taught your students so well how to cope and to do and to live independently. And so that I keep that in mind a lot in the work that I do. And same thing for a behavior plan. Eventually, we don't necessarily want to have an extra piece of documentation to keep up with or think about, because we've supported someone so well that now they can do it on their own. So here's some possible behavior supports. I mentioned routines already. Consistency and routine may be really beneficial in reducing anxiety. Like I mentioned for myself, routines are good for me. I like to know what my schedule is. I don't look too far ahead, but I like to know what's coming. I like to know what I'm up against or what I need to be prepared for. I am someone who suffers from anxiety. And so routines are really good for me. And so that may be something to think about for your staff or for yourself, and knowing that works for you. Like I said, I like to know what's coming, but I also don't look too far ahead, because that can then give me anxiety. So I now know, after my 38 years of life, where my sweet spot is. I kind of know what works for me and where I need to stop for a minute. Maybe it's being able to provide information in advance regarding schedule changes or meetings. Because again, if someone thrives from routine, if we know in advance that something is going to change, give that advance notice. Give that information ahead of time so that they can prepare for that. Sometimes things happen, life happens, and meeting gets canceled 5 minutes before it's supposed to happen. But hopefully we've given enough supports along the way that it doesn't cause a problem. But and again, think back to school days, right? Some individuals have a really difficult time with like fire drills and just having that sprung on them. So some students have an accommodation to know when a fire drill is going to happen in advance so that we don't have a behavior incident. So just thinking through things like that, which kind of leads into the next one, is visual schedules. I don't know about you guys, but if it is not in my calendar on my phone, I don't know where I'm going. And that's a simple accommodation for people. Could your staff member, or could you as an employee, advocate to be able to have a schedule printed off in front of you for what your day is supposed to look like or what you need to do? Could you have it on your device, on your phone or your tablet or whatever that looks like? And then you just want to model that behavior. I, as a supervisor, have taken on and begun with new employees, connecting them with a peer mentor. So that's someone that they can go to, they can call on, they can call me anytime, but now they've got someone else that they can go to that's not their boss, who can help them answer questions, or how should I do this, and kind of troubleshoot it. So that may be another option to just support individuals. Now, switching just a little bit and thinking about engagement. And, I talked about the behavior plans, and we want to involve the individual in that process. And I think especially for our individuals with disabilities who are coming out of high school, which is why I love Project Search, because you guys are doing this, is involving the families, right? So we want to talk about involvement versus engagement. I do a lot of presentations on family engagement, and this slide I use a lot because I think it speaks volumes. It's very important to me, because we want to think about involvement. Involvement is doing two. So we're bringing you there, we're bringing you to the table. We're not really asking you your input. I'm kind of just telling you, this is what we're going to do. This is what I think is going to work. Engagement is doing with. So we bring together and we hear each other's input and use that to form decision making. I'm going to read this so I get it right. But one of the dictionary definitions of the word involve is to enfold or envelop. Whereas one of the meanings of engage is to come together and interlock. So that's where this comes from, is doing to versus doing with. And so I think in a school setting, I talk a lot about this because it's so important to have buy-in from families in making sure that their students are getting what they need in the school setting. I think it works the same in a business setting. I want, as a supervisor, I want my employees to come to me, and I want to be able to hear what it is that works for them versus me just lecturing all the time. This is what you have to do. This is this is wrong, and back and forth. I want to know what works and what doesn't work, because if it's not working for you, you're not going to be productive. And so I want to hear that input so that I can make better decisions for my team. So some possible family engagement outcomes is having your individual, your employee, and you guys who are the employees. I think when your families are involved and you have that opportunity to engage and truly be a part of the process, then we have increased attendance and participation at meetings, at our jobs, at life, whatever it is that we have going on. There's an increased buy-in. You want to be there. There's an opportunity to expand information sharing that increases the work experiences when families are involved. We have the opportunity to help families, or families have the opportunity to learn more and understand the value of financial benefits of employment. We know this is a big topic, especially for individuals with disabilities at all ages, is looking for when your financial benefits make sense, which way you should go with maybe your SSI information. How does that all work? And when families can be involved and can explain their understanding of things or where their concerns are, then as an employer or as an employee, we can alleviate those and help the process. One thing that I love and that I focus on in my work a lot is helping families advocate so that they can teach their children how to be their own best advocates. And so I think through this model and this process of engaging employers and families and the individuals, we do that. There's a sense of modeling this behavior of being able to advocate for our needs. It's a really tricky thing to figure out, you guys. I have had to learn how to do it for myself. I do come from a family of business owners. So my parents were business owners. They just retired. And so I worked for them. And I saw what it was like to be a business owner. So I've kind of been on both sides of the fence on this aspect. And it's so valuable when an employee can come up and say, this is what I need to be productive. This is what I need to be a better employee for you, to help make what we're doing, what our end product is, even better. And so I think it just creates this positive view. And then as you go on through life, you keep building on that skill and you keep just honing it in and making it better. So those are some of our possible outcomes. This slide I wanted to kind of define it for a second. So family involvement is a vision that sees families and professionals working together as mutually respected equals, engaging in open and honest two-way sharing of information. A lot of times, and I think Diane could speak to this, we as professionals sometimes say, this is what family engagement means. And then you talk to a parent or to an individual with a disability, and they have a totally different definition of it. And so this opportunity or this process of collaborating with families and with the individuals brings a much richer foundation and understanding of where each other is coming from. So we know that, sometimes professionals see parent involvement as a supportive role, and families may view involvement more as their opportunity to have valid input into their child's success. And again, I know I'm talking to you guys who are actually in Project Search right now. You guys have this unique and incredible opportunity right now in Project Search to build on this skill, to learn how to advocate for what you need, and to maybe your mom or dad, your parent doesn't need to come to a meeting, but maybe you go home and you have this conversation with your parents of, hey, what are things that we've done in the past that really did work? Can you help me remember what those are? Or maybe could you help me remember that time that things they just didn't work? Can you help me remember what happened at that point, so that I can go back to my job and say, this is why this isn't working. This is why I'm having a difficult time. Or maybe this is why I'm panicking in the afternoons, is because I haven't had enough movement. I haven't had enough breaks. And I need to advocate for myself and ask for that. So I think there are ways to engage families, even if you aren't seeing the families in the setting. They can still be engaged in that process. And I just want to make a point too here in defining family. We live in a world where that definition is ever changing. And so family is defined by the family. I don't ever assume that there's always a mom and a dad. I work with a lot of grandparents who are raising children. And so maybe for me, my family might be my grandma and my uncle. Maybe that's who my family is. Maybe that's who I live with, or that's who I connect with the most. So that's who my family is. And as a supervisor, switching a little bit, if I was a supervisor, knowing that is helpful, because then I'm not going to stick my foot in my mouth, or I'm not going to assume anything and ask about mom or dad, or when the grandmother comes to maybe pick you up from work, I know that's who you live with, and maybe that's who I should connect with and build a bond with. And so just keeping in mind that families are not always that nuclear thing that we think of with mom, dad, and 2 kids. It can look very, very different. So now I want to talk a little bit about the positives, the benefits of positive collaboration. Like I mentioned some of these earlier, but when individuals and their families are brought in and are a part of the collaboration process, everyone is then more apt to trusting and being a willing, engaged, and productive member of the team or the organization. I think there's an opportunity to build trust when you have these conversations. And again, I talk a lot about families, but you guys as Project Search students, this is your opportunity too to have these conversations and to build that trust with your employer, so that they have a higher level of confidence in your skills. We also see increased levels of compliance and doing, what it is that you're supposed to be doing and not going kind of off in left field. Reduced anxiety. I think I say this a lot of times in this presentation, but there's reduced anxiety when you know what's happening and you know why you're doing what you're doing. I think it just really supports communication. Open communication is crucial, and some work environments are designed more to support open communications. Some are a little different. Again, personally, I work in an office space, but all of my employees work remotely. So I don't see them every day. So I have to have those open lines of communication so that we can continue to have that trust and that rapport. And then it just promotes a team mentality, and we do become a team. It's something I have worked really hard on as a supervisor, to make sure that even though we don't all see each other every day, we are a team, and we know what that feels like, and we know that we can come to each other and have these conversations to support. So I've talked a lot about families. I'm gonna keep talking about families for just another minute. But families really can be a valuable partner for successful employment. As an employer, you guys, there may be things that that you want to talk to the families about to see if they can help continue to support and teach at home. As an employee or a student, you guys may want to say, hey, mom or dad or uncle or whoever you live with, do you guys mind just practicing with me? Like, how do I have these conversations? I know one of my colleagues, her son is a Project Search graduate, and they have done a lot of role playing in conversations and how to ask the conversations that need to be asked or the conversations that need to be had. He does now have a job working actually where he did his Project Search. I believe that's right. But he, has learned kind of what the expectations are now. He knows how to go in and have those conversations, but it took a lot of work and it took mom and dad practicing some of that at home with him. So, if there are assessments that need to be had, parents could probably help with providing information there. Parents have a wealth of networks, you guys. Especially, like we said, you guys are older, 19 and 20. They've had a lot of years of finding networks to connect to. So maybe they know different ways that, oh, well, this is not working, but I have a friend over here who teaches, I don't know, soft skills, or has a group for young adults to have a peer mentor. And so let me get connected there because maybe that'll help them in their work environment. And then teaching like real things. Maybe you just need to go home and practice how to count your money. Maybe if you work in, if you work in, let's say the linen department at the hospital, maybe you want to go home and just practice the right way to fold the sheets. That's a skill that everybody needs to know, and I need to practice myself. But there are things that you can go home and you can practice with your families. Or as providers, you could ask mom or dad or caregiver, do you mind just practicing this? This is a new skill that we've learned, or we've introduced a new method to doing something in our work. Do you mind just kind of going over that with them at home and making sure that they understand it and helping you with any questions that may be there? So I think there's a lot of opportunities, like I said, to engage families, even if you're not seeing them face to face in the setting every day. This graph, if you look at it, again, I know you guys are all a little older, but for the providers who are on the line, and even educators, right? This is kind of a timeline of when we start talking about transition in the state of South Carolina. We formally start talking about it at age 13. Conversations happen way before that, we know. But if you look at this graph in this chart, you kind of see some of the ways that families can be involved. What are the student outcomes? And how do I pull my family into this? So if you look all the way over to the right in the far column, and look down at the bottom under roles and responsibilities of families, I think you can see a lot of places that families could be utilized that maybe you haven't thought of before. One for me that I had not really thought about, and I touched on a minute ago, is networks. So that last point, it says provide input on employment opportunities, including connections to businesses. You guys are in Project Search right now, but maybe you go off and get a job somewhere other than the site that you're assigned to. Or maybe you don't really know what's out there to think about looking into. Let's talk to parents and caregivers, especially in our more rural communities. There's an opportunity to connect to local businesses. Like I mentioned, I am from a small business owner family. And as I've met Diane and gotten to know more about Project Search, I'm like, oh, this would have been great for my family to be a part of. And just thinking like, what's out there? Who do you know that owns a business that maybe would be willing to hire someone with a disability, or maybe wants to, but doesn't know how to? And so getting them connected to the right resources to learn how to do that, and how to support and provide these types of accommodations. So that's a lot of information, and I'm going to wrap it up. And now thinking, this whole series that you guys are doing is kind of around mental health. So I just told you a lot of information, but now how does it really affect mental health? And so in thinking about all the things that we've talked about, when they're put into practice and utilized, there are proven benefits for the employee and for the employer. So for the employee, these are a couple. These lists are not all inclusive. There are a lot of benefits to being supported when it comes to thinking about mental health. Like I said, I've mentioned reduced anxiety a lot of times already today, but that's a big one. So reduced anxiety really does lead to better outcomes and more productivity. Like I mentioned, I am someone who I have anxiety. I take medication for it. And I know when I get overloaded or when my plate gets too full, I am going to shut down. I always kind of call myself an ostrich. I like to kind of just forget what's happening in front of me, and I shut down a little bit. And then I get more overwhelmed because I have more work to do because now I'm behind. And then my anxiety goes up. So then I have to really think about how can I break this down into smaller chunks, into smaller assignments, so that then I can get my work done. So as a provider, that may be another accommodation to think about is, can I give this employee smaller tasks that build them up to the larger tasks that I want them to complete, so that their anxiety doesn't get the better of them and they're able to continue to be productive. Thinking about all of the things we've talked about, we then can create a feeling of safety and value. And we all know when you're valued, you do more. If I'm not valued, I'm going to do bare minimum, skate by, get my work done, go home. If I feel valued, I'm going to be happy about what I'm doing. I'm going to be proud about what I'm doing, and I'm going to want to keep coming back to do it. The last bullet kind of relates to what I was just talking about in breaking things down. When we are supported, when individuals are supported and have these accommodations put in place or these plans put in place or whatever it is, you're better able to focus. And when you're better able to focus, you are more productive. When I have too many tabs open, as for an example, if there's too many things going on, I can't focus in on the one thing that I need to get done right then. I don't have it right now, but I used to keep a list on my wall of all my big projects and things that I needed to do so that I could come up with that plan for myself. Again, it's taken me 38 years to be able to figure out how to do that for myself. Maybe not the full 38, but I've been able to figure that out for myself. And so, but that is something that I also had modeled to me with some of my coworkers. And because of that, I can get through my day and I can focus and I can put my head down and get my work done. And I have a better product. I have a better result at the end. So now flipping to what are the benefits for an employer of thinking about your employees' mental health. You have increased productivity. Like I just mentioned, there's increased productivity out there. I'm going to give you some data that comes from understood.org. If you guys have never been on that website, it is a phenomenal wealth of resources and information. But research shows that nearly 86% of employees treated for depression report improved work performance. So they've identified it. We know that's there. They've been treated for it, and now their productivity has gone up. There's an increased work performance. In some studies, treatment of depression has been shown to reduce absenteeism and presenteeism by 40 to 60%. Those are big numbers. So that's, just thinking, and not that everybody on your workforce has depression or anxiety, but just thinking about if we can support what's there and what's needed, the productivity levels are going to increase. They're going to go up. And like I mentioned, right, when we feel safe and valued as employees, we're going to keep coming back to do our job. So for employers, that means you have increased retention. You don't have as high of a turnover. Staff aren't leaving every time you get somebody onboarded. You get to keep up and you get to build them up and get really great products. In 2019, there was a survey of more than 1,500 employees nationwide, and more than a third of the respondents said they had left their job at least in part due to mental health. Of these, 59% said mental health was the primary reason. That's a huge number. If you think about your workforce, that could potentially be over half of your workforce that has some type of mental health concern. And they basically felt unsupported. And so therefore they left. And so we want to help keep our employees in our workforce. And then from that, if you look at the last bullet, for employers, also there's a decreased healthcare and disability cost. According to NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, rates of cardiovascular and metabolic diseases are twice as high in adults with a serious mental health illness. So we, as employers, if someone is having to take excessive leave because of their mental health, because they are depressed, because they are anxiety ridden and they have shut down, you're spending money on someone who's not there. So your costs are going up and people are using your benefits that you're paying for. And so supporting that will decrease those costs for you. Now, I know we're coming up. Oh, I'm actually doing better than I thought on time. But thinking about, I just want to share some of the materials that the organization I work for has in a ways to support you guys. These are some of our resources. It is not an all-inclusive picture of what we have available. What you see on the far left is just a picture of our brochure, just who we are. In the middle is a workbook that I don't have in front of me to show you guys, but it is created as a place to keep all of your information together. So there is a place to keep kind of all about you, who you are as an individual. Another section that talks about your medical needs, and then another section that talks about education. Again, you guys are moving out of kind of the formal education system. Maybe you're going into post-secondary school and this would be something that we could provide to you for free, that helps you just keep in one place who I am, what I need, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what has been used in the past that I really liked, and what's been used in the past that I really didn't like. And so it's just a place to keep it all together. Then on the right side of the screen, you see two pictures of some of our tip sheets that we have that are related to transition to post high school. So the ones that are on there, I believe, are talking about age of majority and state specific graduation plans, which you guys are kind of past that, so you might not need that one, but looking at high school diploma versus credential versus certificate. But we have other tip sheets that are designed for kind of the age bracket that you guys are in. And thinking about what's next, what comes after high school, how do I transition into that and moving forward. All of these resources, I feel like I'm doing a sales pitch, kind of am, but all of these resources are available on our website. You can see the website there at the bottom, and you can order these materials, and I say order loosely because it is at no cost. We just have to have you put in your information so that we can collect how many resources we're sending out. That's all it is. But also these are available as a downloadable version that you can look at on your computer or your tablet or your phone or whatever it is you use. So they're available. These are available to professionals and to parents and to self-advocates for you guys. As students, you guys can access these resources as well. And my last slide is resources. These are some of the resources that I pulled in working, kind of thinking through this presentation today. There's a lot of other resources out there. One, I will say the first link and the third link are both from our Department of Health and Human Services here in South Carolina. And I actually was part of the work group that worked on these. And they are a little more specific to person-centered planning. So as you are moving into being an adult and you are going to your medical appointments or your waiver appointments, your case management appointments by yourself, these are some ways to support you as you go into those, what questions to ask, how to advocate for what you need. So I included them because I think they're really important resources for you guys. And so I wanted those to be included. And Diane, you guys have these and y'all can send them out, or I can send them in an email if that's easier. But I think they're all really great resources. And then the last, this is just my information. If you guys need me, please feel free to give us a call. Family Connection is available Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. And a live person will actually answer the phone. We don't send you to a prompt. And you can actually talk to somebody and we can help answer questions. And if we don't have the right answer, we will help you get to the organization that does have the right answer. We're all about getting connected to what you need. So with that, I ended a little early, sorry, but I know you guys also have busy days. Are there any questions that I can help answer or anything?
I put a thing in the chat that if anybody has any questions, you guys can go ahead and raise your hand and then I can click where it says allow to talk. But Sally, myself, I just wanted to tell you, like, I'm so appreciative of Family Connection, like, and the work that you do. So thank you so much for being here because, you know, coming into this role, and I think we've all had to think about it, is just like, it's very easy to be like, well, why aren't the families doing this? And they need to be doing this. And you know what I mean? I've gotten a whole different perspective of it. And the work that you do has really helped me with that. You know what I mean? And being able to see what options are available for families to like, just kind of take the ease off a little bit and where can you help them and stuff. And it's just been really great, you know, to be able to work with you. So whoever's on this call and all people, I absolutely recommend for you guys all to connect with Family Connection at some point, because wherever you are, you know what I mean? Sally will be able to direct you, or somebody will be able to direct you. And on your, on the flyer or the pamphlet that you had up there, the little girl that was on the left, I know her. Yeah. Yep. I know her. Yep.
Well, so I will say all of our pictures that we use in our materials are families that we've served. And so we love that we get to use the families that we serve and not some random picture off of the internet. It's something that we really pride ourselves in. So I love that you know her. That makes me excited.
Oh yeah. She's in my area. So I know as soon as it came up, I was like, I know her. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I will say this is really a random kind of tip when you said, Diane, like the things that you just don't think about until you think about them. I don't know if you guys noticed while I was talking, like I realized I had this in my hand. This is an accommodation that helps with my anxiety. It is a fidget spinner, but also a poppet. I use a paper clip a lot too. So when I do presentations, that's something that helps me. And those are things that I think as professionals and adults, we don't always think about because we just do it. And so there's a conversation that I have a lot of times with youth and with parents is to say, like, what are the little things that work? It doesn't have to be a big, they need a visual schedule printed and hung up on the wall so they see every minute of their day. It can be very small things that just help make them move better and do better. And for me, I can spin this and you guys don't see it on the screen and I can keep myself focused. So it's just those little things to think about. And that's what we are here to do. And that's why I really appreciate you guys having us here today to have these conversations.
Well, Sally, it's interesting that you say that because I was just in a 2-day conference last week and there was one of the presenters, she had autism. And while she was doing her presentation, she was on the treadmill and she had a weighted vest on. And the treadmill, obviously she wasn't going super fast on the treadmill, but she said it just made her feel better to move and to be so that she could be, you know what I mean, able to talk, and her anxiety was reduced by that. So, you know, she discussed maybe possibly for those that might have desk jobs, they have like, you can either sit on like the bouncy ball as a chair, or they even have like the bike, you know, like you can be moving your legs at the same time. And it was really cool to learn about what accommodation she needed and stuff like that, and how she was able to pick up on, you know, her own self-awareness and everything. Because even during this, guys, it was funny because, like, you know, Sally's talking about having anxiety. I do too. I've taken medication for a very long time for it. And like this situation with everybody coming in under my name and everything was kind of making my anxiety amped up, because I'm like, we have done everything that we needed to do. But then I had to tell myself, I'm like, this is out of my control. Like I'm doing the best that I can. And it's like, so with all of the information that you're giving to everybody, it is a lot to think about, because our future is a lot to think about, but always just like my recommendations are trying to know what the expectations, where you are, like, what are your expectations and what are the expectations of others around you. And once that becomes clear, I think that can really help people in that situation and reduce that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why I say, like, the behavior plans, when Hannah and I talked about this workshop, we talked about behavior plans. It can be formal, but it doesn't have to be. It could be something very like the graphic one, you know, that I showed, very simple. Let's just think through what works and what doesn't. And knowing how to be productive, and knowing what works to do that. And like you said, the bouncy ball, I have my yoga ball is on the other side of my desk, because if I sat on it during this presentation, y'all would like,
yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, no, awesome.
I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand or questions. And I mean, that's fine. If anybody has any later, you know, I'm sure Sally would be more than happy to.
Absolutely. I was like, again, there's our website. You guys, Diane has my contact information. You guys can reach out to me directly if you need to. I'm happy to help answer questions anytime.
Great. And if everybody can just stay on for a few minutes, Caroline is going to put up the poll, it should only take you less than a minute to do. And then right after that, if you can log off, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was great. I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. Now, let me know if you cannot see it. Let's see.
It just popped up on my end. Is everybody in the attendees able to see it? I can't hear them say anything, but if somebody just can put it in the chat that you're able to see it, that'd be great.
I'm getting some answers in here, so hopefully that means people can see it. Great. I see some of you are done with the poll. Whenever you're finished, you can go ahead and log out that. Thank you so much for filling that out. Okay, on my end, Diane, it's saying 100% has been filled out.
That's perfect. We can go ahead and use these and then everybody can log out now. So thank you guys so much. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.